week we return all our cans and bottles. Yeah, we help to reduce the world's waste.
But aluminum? It's like gold. Oh, yeah.
Environmental defense. Get green. For more environmentally friendly tips, go to getgreen.com.
Oh, there's a bottle.
Where?
Right over there. To your left. To your left. There you go. You got it.
Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs, and welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstories, filmed at the Cablevision Studios here in Hop Hog on Long Island, New York. First of all, before we get started, I have to thank our producer, Andrew Hersman, for building this beautiful set. He designed it from scratch, spent a lot of time working on this with computer imaging, and really, he just done an amazing job on the set, and I'm really thankful for that. So, our first guest that we're doing with our new set is our cameraman, who's Donald Caulfield from Bayshore. And Donald's just an amazing guy, and he does a lot of volunteer work. He doesn't get paid to do camera number 3, which he's usually on right now. So you know what, we said let's have him on the show. We always have different people on the show. Some of them are on because they're politicians. We have people who have been abused by the court system. And I said, you know what, let's just have a regular good person on the show, because it's interesting to hear. You know, they say everybody has a story. We say here everybody has a backstory. So we're going to hear about Donald. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gary.
So, Don, I know you're not a native to Long Island. Tell us where you grew up.
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, and my parents moved upstate to a town called Portlandville a year after I was born.
So you can still claim you're from Brooklyn.
Yeah, but I always considered myself a hillbilly, which I found out I'm really not anymore. Since I moved down here in '73, and I worked in Mid-Island Hospital at the time. It was an experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. The people they were just genuine people back then when I worked with. Things have changed in the hospital setting immensely since I've been here. I was a darkroom technician at the time. I developed all the film by the processor. Then we used to have to do Kuso film. We had
probably don't have film anymore.
Well, they do have. You could get an X-ray to come out, but basically you don't need them. It's all done digital now. It comes out as soon as you take the picture, it's already out. But they could put the X-rays on film. It comes out on like on a computer. Just take the computer, puts it onto the film, and then the processor itself that spits it out.
How did you learn how to develop? Because that's an important job, because if you don't do it right, they got to take another one, and now people are getting more radiation. So that's a pretty important job. And how did you learn it?
Well, basically what happened to me, when I started the hospital in '73, I was there for 6 months. I was a runner. But I really didn't like doing what I was doing. I mean, I didn't mind it. I knew I was there for the patients. That's what it's all about. But I always wanted to be a darkroom technician. At the time, I knew a guy since I was a kid who was a darkroom technician. And it was just amazing hearing, but he was doing it back then by hand. My father was a photographer and showed us how to develop X-rays. Not X-rays, but regular film by hand. And that was many years ago, back in the late 50s, early 60s. And that's where I basically learned. But when I come to the hospital, it's all a different ball game. The darkroom technician who was there actually used to call in sick every so often, and I'd ask if I could fill in. And they told me what to do. It was, to me, it was just learning it, which only took a matter of a day
Really?
to learn it, because we used to have 5 different films. You had 9 by 9, 8 by 10, 10 by 12, 11 by 14, 14 by 17. And then it was when you used to do this other kind of film, but they had a catcher to catch them. You used to put 14 by 14. And it was used to put these films in the Showlander, and the Showlander used to take multiple pictures at one time, at a time, and you had to run all the films. And that was to watch the dye go through when the doctors were looking for the dye to see how it was traveling through your system, which was very interesting. I was fortunate enough to have doctors actually take time to show me X-rays and explain to me what it was all about. And I was really blessed by this because I was really interested in the whole aspect of the other part of it, learning about what's going on in the human body. So I had a couple of cops who I knew that I helped get retired by looking at their X-rays. I seen something in their X-rays which I couldn't actually explain, so I asked if I could take their X-rays, show them to a doctor, and I brought them into a doctor, radiologist, and he circled. We circled where the whatever the problem was, and then he'd turn around and he'd say, "Okay," and he wrote. And he'd write what it was, and I gave it back to the 2 friends I knew, and each of them had retires on 3/4, which helped them out.
What was it?
There was one was, I believe they were with the knee. I can't remember the phrase the doctor used at the time, but I believe it was with the knee. But it was so I had problems in the knee, which could cause them the knee to go out or whatever else.
Yeah, so there you go. So how long did you work in the doing the X-rays?
I worked 36 years here,
wow.
And I worked up until I got hurt in 2009 from a bike accident.
That was a crazy thing. You tell me about that bike accident. That was an amazing story that you recovered well from that. That was a bad accident.
It took me. I was in the hospital 14 days. It was in Brookhaven. The doctors were, Dr. Sucre was the doctor I had, and I owe him a lot because he actually stood by me. He actually not only did he stand by me, but when I was in the hospital, I couldn't use my right arm or left arm, and was just all a mess. And I had breakfast this one day, and they brought me in to breakfast, and I couldn't peel my egg, so he actually came in, he peeled my egg for me.
Wow.
And it was just a caring guy, just a caring guy.
But what kind of accident? Was it a car accident? Or
No, it was a bicycle. It was a
wasn't
bicycle accident where another bike clipped me, and I got locked up, and I got thrown off. I broke multiple bones in my chest, my ribs, multiple ribs, scapular, clavicle, shoulder. I still have a lot of constant pain.
Yeah, I know you never complain, but sometimes you tell me you're in pain all the time.
Yeah, lots of times the pain's just there, and I could just sit there and cry. But instead of crying about it, you can't just sit and mope, because it's not going to do you any good. Right. So what I do is I just kind of like take a deep breath, and I do my meditation. Lots of times I do nothing at the house. I'll just sit around because of so much pain, and I'll just hang out, and But then I'll do that for a day or two, and then I'll get back to my norm, and I'll go back to doing what I'm doing, and just I feel blessed to be able to get back out there, and I do some riding again. I've been doing some bike riding to try to stay in shape, and I really have a lot of friends who actually help me along with this by being there and coaching me along. Like if I get, like a lot of times I'll get out there doing a little ride, and I'll get kind of like don't feel like going anymore, I can't. And they'll say, come on, Donnie, we're right with you. And they'll slow down, and they're there to just encourage me to go along, which I feel blessed for. So that's and having good friends to help support you, it's a big thing in life.
Yeah, you keep saying you're blessed. So, one of the things, you're a good friend of mine, and one of the things that I admire you, there's a lot of things, but one of the things is that you have such a good positive attitude all the time. You're not the richest guy in the world. You worked hard your whole life. You had your issues like many of us do, but you still always have a positive outlook, and you always talk about being blessed. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I bring that up because I feel with my parents, a lot with my parents. My parents, when I was a kid, no matter how things got, they always encouraged us to, look on the bright side. I remember my parents, before they passed, my father and my mother, they lived in a trailer. And this trailer was a 1970 trailer, and they had it until they passed in 2002. And the trailer, they had siding put on it, but the people who put the siding on did a poor job. They had a lot of broken siding. They put in new windows for them, and windows were good, but there was so much going on with the trailer. The floor was completely gone. I had a friend of mine actually go upstate with me one time, and this was back many years ago, probably back in the late 70s, probably 1980s, and he helped me put a floor in my parents' trailer, which, and then my parents had a lot of problems with the roof leaking, pots all over the place, and my people come in the house and they'd say, boys, he said, hey, he said, could always be worse, because they see about a dozen pots around catching the water, and he said, why complain? He says, at least we got a roof over our head, even though it's leaking. So I have a lot to...
So you think just instilled by your parents all the time, telling you that, things could be worse,
things could always so bad. Things could always be worse. You think about how people say, well, the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. What differences does it make? You got yourself a drink there, enjoy it,
But that's a great outlook that you have on life, to live, and it's a lesson to live for every day and enjoy it. But another thing that you do that's something I think ingrained in your personality that makes all of us care about you is that you're always trying to better yourself. And I remember we were talking about a book that you were reading, and you said, well, I never really read much, and in school I got made fun of for the way I read, but I still want to try to read and better myself. Well, that's some drive to have at your age, that you still always want to better yourself. So tell us about, in school you said you weren't considered,
There was a 7th grade teacher I had, Mrs. Chase, I believe her name was. We went to Milford School, and I got flunked back in 1st grade, and I flunked in 4th grade. And it was due to the kids that got flunked the same time I did, and we all got held back. And I was in 7th grade, and I went to raise my hand to read, and the teacher goes to me, she says, Donald, why are you raising your hand for? She said, can't read anyway. So I got very discouraged, and I used to hang out in the hall and look in the window and not pay attention. Yeah, I didn't even bother going to that class. I just didn't
But that's
care.
A lesson for all of us to learn, and for the team. We don't do that anymore.
Well,
but that's a lesson, because that really had an impact on your life and on your self-esteem, I guess.
It does, because you feel if you find an adult don't want to take an interest in you, then really you think you're going to be held back from everything you do. And I have a lot to do. My mother was in her 70s, and she still was going back. She was in a magazine upstate in Oneonta that she was going back to school to try to get an education. and she was trying to get her high school education. Well, she died before she managed to get it. And she was 77 at the time.
That had to make that's your role model, is that she kept trying to
but
better herself.
she was going on a school bus with all these school kids.
Yeah.
And a lot of school kids were starting to make fun of her. But then she turned it around so that they kind of like, looked at her and used her as an inspiration to go to, if she could do it, go to school at her age to try to better herself, well, we should get a better education for ourselves.
Right.
And so I think with all that, and plus moving down here and having you as a friend, Gary, and Chris, and a whole mess of other people, even the people I worked with at the hospital. When I was working at the hospital, my reading was very poor, and I used to pick up a book and I'd start to read it, and a lot of people at the hospital and were always there to encourage me and to figure out the words. And if I didn't know it, they'd turn around, they'd help me out. They'd help me sound. I'm not the best reader, but
I've heard you read. You read pretty well.
Well, I want to be better, and I want to improve myself. And I think with all the people that have helped me and to be around me are good role models. And I think to be a good role model for our kids, if we all got together for our kids to show them what we could do, or to be there to encourage them, to make them better for our community and so on and so forth. I did a lot of security. I worked for a lot of different security companies as well. And I used to work the streets. And I seen so many kids out there at a young age selling drugs. And I'll never forget this one kid I was with an older guy who was probably in his maybe early to mid-20s, and he was with this little kid, and this kid had to be in his teens, and I said, "Don't you think you belong home in bed?" And he goes, "I'm a man." I looked at him and I said, "You're a man, all right." And I said, "You deserve a kick in the behind." And the older guy gave him a kick, and he goes, "There's a kick for you," which he did, I felt he was just, just did it just to please me, but it wasn't really a kick. And I feel our kids nowadays, they don't have the respect for the adults that they used to have. It's because they don't get the discipline at home. Our parents gave us plenty of discipline at home. When we needed a good whack, they gave it to us. Now you got all these people here that say, "Oh, you shouldn't hit your kids, you shouldn't do this." Well, maybe they should stop and look and see why they're like they are today, or why the kids are like they are. Because they help make this mess. They should do something to improve the kids, to give them better encouragement to go on, to be a better role model for our community. Because the people who are going to be running our country in this next generation, after we're older or gone, I'd hate to be in this situation. Right. I'm glad I'm at the age I am, so I could look back and say, well, where you are, I was. Where I am, you will be if you're lucky.
Right. One of the they talk about how we all say you can judge a person, tell what kind of person they are by the way they treat animals. And you are an animal lover, although you live in an apartment complex, so you can't be loaded with a lot. But you do have birds. Tell us about your birds.
Well, I have 3 birds. I have 2 parakeets and 1 Gende concha. And this Gende, I could take him, he lays in my hand, and I just pet him. He just likes to be loved. My parakeet, I could call him over to me, and he'll actually come over to the side of the cage and give me a kiss. It's something, I play with all animals. I had a squirrel come into my house.
That's a crazy story. I saw pictures of that. Tell Tell everybody watching about this squirrel, because you know what? Sometimes animals have like a sense of who's a good person. I know squirrels never come near me, but tell them about that squirrel.
Well, this guy we were feeding the birds, and this squirrel went in the bird feeder, and I told him I was going to get up and pull the squirrel's tail, and he looked at me and like I was nuts, and I felt nuts by saying it, but I got up and I walked over to the feeder, and I actually grabbed the squirrel by the tail and I started going like this. So I went back, sat down, I told him, I said, go do it again, just to, and I did. So, and
this is here on Long Island?
Yeah, he's here in Long Island. And I turned around and I says, I'm going to get this squirrel to sit on my lap. And by the time I kept putting nuts out and I put them closer, and finally the squirrel come on my lap. And then finally the last straw was when I opened the door and I said to the squirrel, come on, and the squirrel come on in. I had people who were walking there watch me call the squirrel from across the complex. The squirrel come running, and the people standing there like, I never seen a pet squirrel before. I mean, a squirrel do that before. I said, well, you never met me before either. But my bird is funny, because I'll call Mama and I'll say, come on, Mama, squirrel. And my bird will say, come on. And she'll just he'll walk right in the house. My daughter was sitting there and watched it with my granddaughter. And my daughter was just amazed to see a squirrel come in and sit at her feet, and and I said, well, that's the way it is,
You're like Noah's Ark. Well, Don, you're a fascinating guy. We could talk. There's so much to talk about. But one of the things I did want to talk about in the last 5 minutes of the show, because I love you like a brother. You're a great friend, but you're also entertaining, because you got some crazy views on politics that I don't always agree with, and you don't hold back. You're an outspoken person, although I think you respect everybody else's views. But a lot of times we go out to dinner and you tell me about your views on politics. In the last 4 or 5 minutes of the show, tell us your views on politics. I know you're not a big Obama supporter.
Well, Obama should be thrown the hell out, because he don't know his ass from his elbows. All he cares about himself. He don't really care about our country.
What's he done wrong, in your opinion?
Well, he's letting all these people come over the borders. How do you know they're not terrorists or sleeper cells you're letting in? And all our bleeding heart liberals are going along with this, and everybody else who's basically going along with Obama, or instead of sticking up for the way our country should be, is the way it used to be, they should just out him and get somebody else. I just hope Donald Trump gets in, or Farina. I think she's another good one, or Ben Carson, because there are people who aren't going to get favors. I don't know about Ben Carson or Farina, but I know Donald Trump has the money to support his own campaign, where all these others are getting funded to get run for office, so they're going to owe a lot of favors. And if you owe favors, you're not going to get nothing done.
Right.
So,
but the people voted for him twice, so he's back in the office a second time. So is everybody wrong? Did he change?
He didn't change anybody, and the people who voted for him, they're just about as big a dummies as I ever seen.
But you don't think maybe the people who voted, this, and he said hope and change,
well,
maybe those are the people who were like you, who were optimistic and said he's going to change.
Well, when I heard Obama say he was going to run, my daughter came to me and she said, Obama is going to give us, and basically what these people are looking for is getting the free handouts. This is what I believe. I don't know, well, my daughter's not in that circumstances, but yet she was looking for hope and change as well. But you never heard of the guy, and if somebody's running and going to promise you so much, there's only so much he could do, because his hands are tied, because he's got all these other people that he owes favors for, so he wants to take care of them before he worries about our country.
Right.
So.
Well, Donald, thank you for being a guest. You've been behind the camera so many times, and like I said, you're a great friend. not only to me, but we have a lot of other mutual friends, and you're just a great person. May not always agree with you politically, but that's okay. That's what friends do.
That's what friends-
We can argue, but something that special about you is that you're always there when a friend needs a hand. I don't think you know how to say no. You volunteer on Long Island Backstory. You volunteer for FIT TV. You go to church. You volunteer there, and you're just an all-around great person. And if there was more people like you, I think the world would be a better place.
Well, if you think about it, if somebody needs help, we're supposed to be there for them. It's not for what we get, because what we get is we get the thanks. It's more than enough. And that's all I need. Just say hi, I love you, and that's it.
Thank you, Don. I love you. You're a great friend.
Love you too, brother.
I'm Gary Jacobs, and thank you for joining us here at Long Island Backstory, and we'll see you next week. And we're available all the time on YouTube, and I ask that anybody who enjoys this program or enjoys the other programs that we do, please like our page on Facebook, Long Island Backstory, and then you'll be notified which shows are going to be airing, and you can also see the repeats of the shows that have previously aired. Thanks for joining us.
You'd never know it on the battlefield, but nearly half of today's military are National Guard and reservists. However, they can't answer our nation's call without their employer's support. If you're an employer, visit esgr.org and find out how to do your part. After all, their response depends on yours.
It's springtime in the forest of the black-tailed deer. The young male is feeling playful. It's time for tag. The female flicks her ears. Her way of saying, "Catch me if you can."